English translation, 478th. Contact Sunday, 14th of June, 2009, 13:09 hours.
Ah, you are already here, dear friend. Nice that you are back here and we can have a little chat. But do not just be greeted warmly, you are also welcome in the same way. During your absence, a question has arisen concerning certain things that we had discussed in earlier conversations respectively, after the official conversations privately. So if I may start my questioning right at the beginning?
Of course, that is unquestionable. But first I want to say this. It is always a pleasure for me that you do not ask questions about where I was during my absence and what I did. Because I would be sorry to talk about these things because we can spend our time with better topics of conversation. Greetings, dear friend. I am very happy to see you well.
I agree with you. And besides, it is not my business where you are or what you are doing, because that is your private affair. I'm also not curious.
A great value that I appreciate very much in you.
Thank you, but now something else. It was probably in the 1980s when we once briefly talked about soy products, but that was on a purely private basis, so what we talked about was not recorded in an official contact report. To this again the question whether you can recall this conversation and give it to me, because you have always recorded all our conversations? Because regarding these things I was asked whether you had ever said anything about them.
If it is important to you, then I can of course retrieve the conversations of that time for you. But it takes some time before I have the data available, as you know.
I know that, yes. Last time it took about 4 minutes before you had the data available. But from the conversations at that time, I only need the small part that referred to the soy products. If you can search for it specifically?
That is no problem. Then I will try to find it now about 4 minutes later. These are the dates you asked for. You are mistaken, however, because we did not have this conversation in the 1980s, but privately after the official 267th contact conversation ended on the 30th of June, 1998.
Oh, then I succumbed to deception regarding the year. My memory is unfortunately not the same as before my health breakdown in 1982.
Which is not surprising, contrary to your health, which you were able to rebuild inexplicably for me in such a way that you have only few disadvantages left. But now listen to what I can read to you here.
267th Contact Report Supplement, Private Conversation from the 30th of June, 1998.
Then I would like to ask you about the soy products, which are the reason for so much fuss, and which are also used to make various dishes, spices, oils, and tofu. I have already eaten the tofu in several variations, but I did not like any form of it, but disgusted me. It seems to me like a disgusting form of papier-mâché or foam, at least inedible. That is why I do not understand why many people eat this stuff and rave about it. It is the same phenomenon as with the bland and tasteless pear respectively, the avocado fruit, which was once genetically manipulated and bred for pig feed, but which is now used as food by human beings.
The taste buds of many Earth humans have been changed, or even destroyed in such a way that they perceive the actual taste of food and semi-luxury items as more or less distorted.
That is also what I thought. But that was not my real question, because it refers to whether soy products are really as healthy as the food industry claims.
The principle is quantity, because too much is unhealthy, as you yourself always say. Basically, soy is a high-quality protein plant in which isoflavones in the form of phytoestrogens are also present in large quantities. However, both the protein and the isoflavones, as well as other substances of soy, are in no way harmless. Especially the isoflavones have a very worrying effect on the hormonal balance when consumed over a longer period of time and in larger amounts. However, all other soy substances are also not harmless, which is why they should only be used as food with sufficient caution or not at all. In particular, no food for children should contain any soya products, because with regard to isoflavones, especially infants, toddlers and adolescents are affected by soya products with regard to their health and even seriously damaged in health and other respects. Already less than 1/4 milligram of isoflavones per kilogram body weight and day can cause very serious and irreparable health damage in children of all ages, both in terms of consciousness, brain, intelligence, thought and feeling, psyche, physical and behavioral state, etc. If pregnant women consume soya products, it can cause serious and irreparable damage to their body, limbs, nerves, brain, and muscles, as well as body deformations. More than 1/4 milligram of isoflavones per kilo of body weight should not be administered to infants and toddlers under any circumstances. Put in simple and generally understandable words and terms, soy products of all kinds, due to their toxic ingredients in large quantities, are capable of impairing the health of even strong adults and of causing severe damage, ranging from tumor formation, respectively, cancer formation, and its promotion to brain, consciousness and behavioral disorders, personality changes, and infertility. Breast cancer in women and men in particular is often caused by soy products, as are depression and Parkinson's disease, especially if there is a hereditary predisposition to them. Alzheimer's disease and dementia can also be consequences of an excess of isoflavones, as well as impairment of eyesight, taste buds, concentration, moral balance, and various other important life factors.
What should be the amount of soy that an adult is allowed to consume?
The amount depends on the content of isoflavones, of which a human being should not ingest more than 1/2 milligram per kilo of body weight per day if he does not want to be toxically affected.
This means that a human being of 70 kilograms body weight should not consume more soy products than these contain 35 milligrams of isoflavones. But this amount is reached very quickly with soy consumption.
This is indeed the case, because a normal soy drink of 2.5 dl already contains about 30 milligrams of isoflavones.
And what about drugs made from soy respectively in relation to their isoflavones?
Such drugs are in no way recommendable. If on the one hand they are not adapted to body weight, and on the other hand are taken over too long a period of time, or if the human being is particularly susceptible to isoflavones.
Your explanations in the human being's ear and rationality. Thank you. Thanks, Ptah. That is exactly what someone wants to know. Perhaps it would be good if such and many other things were not discussed in a private wise and therefore also appeared in the official contact reports.
We should not do that, because I find our purely private conversations, on the one hand, very valuable in terms of the personal touch and our mutual trust, and on the other hand, many conversations are not meant for the public. But if there are any questions, etc., concerning certain privately discussed things and facts, which might be of importance for answering as a result of other people's questions, then I can call up the necessary information and tell you, just as I did now, and as I did on the 3rd of February. But I would like to point out that such an action is only appropriate when it is about important things.
Sure, my friend. I can agree with that. But something else. There is an Air France plane with about 228 human beings on board that crashed into the sea on its flight to Europe, and it is not yet clear why the accident happened. Do you know anything about it?
Yes, I know what happened, which is because the flying apparatus was struck by two lightnings at the same time and exploded, which is a very rare occurrence. The unsuitable construction material of the flying apparatus and the technical devices were not able to withstand the lightning strikes, so that it crashed and was truly torn into thousands of pieces when it hit the water.
Lightning was first suspected to be the cause of the crash, but then that assumption was rejected. But what about the election in Persia, respectively Iran? Is everything going well? And do you still have things of foresight that are important to mention?
I also know about that. The whole thing is based on an electoral fraud unprecedented in favor of Ahmadinejad. Several million election results can be described as false and manipulated, which causes great unrest and even causes deaths. The election results have already been falsified for months, in which the so-called Council of Guardians, as well as the authoritative religious dignitary Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, are not involved. Khamenei will, however, declare the massively falsified ballot to be of the legitimate and confirm Ahmadinejad in his erudite office, because he is in the wrong way showing solidarity with the religious system. What is important with regard to foresight is already quite a lot. For example, that the king of pop, Michael Jackson, will suffer a cardiac arrest and will die in 11 days respectively on the 25th of June as a result of an irresponsibly and negligently overdosed drug cocktail.
Poor guy. He has had a hard life in spite of his success and has gained fortune. But what about the claim that he was a pedophile and abused children? I simply cannot imagine that with the best of intentions.
This corresponds to nothing else than infamous lies invented by parents who let their children go to Michael Jackson and then accuse him via the courts in an infamous way of lying and exploiting him financially. Out of my own interest, I tried to find out about these things at that time and found out that none of the allegations were true. But to the contrary, they were all just lying inventions to gain financial profit. The allegedly abused children were drilled by their parents with regard to their lie stories until they themselves finally believed the lies to be the truth and claimed that they had been sexually abused.
But such abuses did not happen at any time, as I could clearly clarify, because Michael Jackson loved children more than anything else, and would never have done anything like that to them.
He himself has not experienced a real childhood, but was irresponsibly forced by his father to give it up for the sake of music, singing, and success. But the boy never got over this, and therefore in his nature he always remained a boy. Following that, he also surrounded himself with children and played all kinds of games, etc. with them, which, however, were in every way clean and correct as well as loving, and which did not show any form of sexual abuse. The man Jackson is still a boy in his nature, very sensitive, kind, and dreamy, living in his own strange world, which is not respectively only in a few small parts corresponds to reality. Unfortunately, his funeral is made into something tremendously spectacular, which corresponds to a glorification.
I am pleased with your explanation, even though the whole thing is a sad case, and also arouses sadness about his death. A lot of human beings will honestly mourn for him, I can imagine, because his music and his singing were good, even if it was pop. This in contrast to other forms of pop, which have been around for years and are truly nothing more than a tremendously disharmonic shrieking, howling, and whining, in contrast to which the howling of wolves sounds directly harmonious.
You said that very well. Because what is nowadays usually called music and singing by the young Earth humans, and to which the adolescents are frenetically attached, no longer contains any harmony at all. As you say, it is nothing more than screaming, howling, and whining, which no longer contains any harmony whatsoever, but only aggression, to which the adolescents become addicted and dangerously antisocial. As a result, certain young people become angry destroyers of human achievements and degenerates who are unscrupulous and full of hatred. And out of sheer lust and wantonness, etc., they endanger the life and limb of their fellow human beings, or even seriously injure them, beat them to a pulp, or kill them. In fact, a very large part of this lies in the forms of what is called singing and music, whereby the dissonant pop and the like fundamentally promote aggression, antisociality, irresponsibility, virtuelessness, and hatred, etc. in adolescence. Through these forms of howling, shrieking, and whining, as you say, which today are called singing and music, Earth humans, especially children and youth, are increasingly losing respect for the norms of society, the virtues, and the righteous. Mainly many adolescents who have not had an adequate education and are therefore prone to antisocial behavior are transformed into evil and bad people, which leads to contempt for human beings, law, and order. Factors from which racism, extremism, radicalism, and terrorism also arise. On the other hand, however, the alleged music and the unmelodic screeching mentioned above also gives rise to the opposite, namely that the young people are misled by the rapture of religion and other sectarians to believe in religion and God, and consequently they become believers in God, as you aptly call it in your new book. Very little truly harmonious singing and harmonious music will be created, and if they are, then only by older human beings and interpreters who are still fond of the truly harmonious sounds and who also have a corresponding way of life.
You speak for me, my friend. It is soothing for me to listen to your words. But let me ask you a question about a book published in 1997 with the title Co-Evolution. It was written by a New Zealander, a certain Alec Newald, who claims to have had contact with an alien named Zeena from a planet called Haven in 1989, and that he was also abducted by the friendly aliens. The book also claims that the process of natural development is wrongly called evolution, because this process should be called natural development of species. In my opinion, even this nonsensical sham statement indicates that everything is just nonsense in relation to the alleged abduction and the alleged contact with an extraterrestrial. Yes, because the term evolution is of correctness, respectively natural development and slow, uninterruptedly progressing natural development. Accordingly, evolution is also to be understood as natural development of species from lower to higher forms of living beings, whereby the human being also belongs to this category. The book Co-Evolution is also full of illogical, erroneous dialogues and statements that are childish and naive. Besides this, it is clear that many things have been copied from our contact conversations, as well as from my predictions, as I have published them again and again since the 1950s until today. There are also things mentioned that could come from the Fiat Lux sect, the Rail sect, and other similar sects, that extraterrestrials would come in droves to Earth and would create order here. It is also possible that an exchange would be made with the Earthlings if they, the extraterrestrials, needed certain things from the Earth. But this alleged Zeena, for example, is supposed to have said the following, spoken according to the words of the book writer, as I wrote out here. She indicated that the force would soon feel the weight of an invasion from above. This is a global evil force on Earth. Note, Billy, and that battles would be fought on the sea, underwater, and also high up in the sky.
Most people would learn very little about these events, apart from those who would be affected by the side effects of these battles.
By this she meant that the Earth would experience storms of increasing intensity. And while these storms once raged only at the vortex points of our Earth, the Bermuda region in the western Atlantic and the western Pacific Ocean southeast of Japan, they would in the future occur all over the planet. She did not say who or what was behind these battles, nor what the reason was, etc. But there are many other things, also the beaming up, as I call it again and again. Don't you also think that this was cribbed from my predictions and fundamentally remodeled?
I did not want to interrupt your lengthy exposition because I think it is important for those human beings who will be able to read our published conversations. What is to be said about all that is written in this book, which I myself also know and have read throughout, is not based on truth, but on pure fantasy. But unfortunately, it is the case that many Earth humans have again fallen for this invented story and continue to fall for it. Because untruths are more important to all those who want to see something supernatural or simply something inexplicable and fantastic in everything. But once two questions from me. How far have you progressed with the translations of the Goblet of the Truth, so that you can put the first sections of the English version on the internet? It would have been necessary to do this for some time. And how far have you progressed with your new book, God Delusion? It would be important that this book is published next, when the 10th block of contact talks is finished.
The first 2 or 3 sections are done so far, but we're still waiting for the translation of the new English copyright. Unfortunately, we also always have great difficulties with the translations, because there are simply not the necessary words and terms in the English language, which we have in the German and Swiss German language. As a result, many things cannot be translated correctly. I will finish the new book next month.
This new English copyright version is not of great importance, so you should immediately make what you have already worked out accessible to Earth humans via the internet. That alone is important, but not the copyright. On the other hand, it is important that the new book is distributed. As far as translations are concerned, I'm well aware of the difficulties, including the completely wrong interpretation of the word idol, which is wrongly interpreted as idol, but which is fundamentally wrong, as our linguists have explained to me. An idol can never be compared to an idol, just as an idol cannot be compared to an idol. Their explanation is that an idol note Billy, idol. Greek eidolon, lat. Idolum, cax the image, the figure, embodies a shadow image of the isolated respectively separated from the normal, especially with regard to mental emotional movements. These are such that, through a pathological disturbance of the function of understanding and reason, a delusion arises through which one's own esteem is disregarded, and this is only directed towards the delusional image. This is then the idol, which, like a ghost, is regarded as a special phenomenon and is vehemently swarmed over, idolized and admired as something very special and particular, just as a figure, whereby this can only ever be a human being. The reasons for the veridolization of human beings can be very diverse, for example related to their appearance, their manner of speaking, the pitch of their voice, their singing, their world of thoughts and feelings, their deeds, their actions, their work, their behavior and conduct, their knowledge and achievements, etc. Contrary to this is the idol, who embodies an idolatry respectively, a counter-god to a religiously recognized God and God-creator. An idol is in any case an artificially produced object or a statue, etc., which is thought to be a creating and creative force, and which is supposed to influence the fate and the prosperity and destruction of human beings. An idol is in any case a concept modified from the religious concept of God, which is an idol opposed to a religious deity and thus an idol. An idol is in any case considered to be a higher being in one form or another, in the form of a worshipped object, a picture or statue, etc. In the originally monotheistic sense of religion, the term idol means false god. Seen in the true sense of this interpretation and facts, Also within all monotheistic religions, as well as within all non- or polytheistic religions, all their images, cult utensils, statues, and ritual objects, etc., are idols. Idols with and by which and through which idolatry is performed.
Very good explanation. Could have also occurred to me. So Christianity with all its sects is also included in this, whereby Catholicism in particular is in the forefront, which, quite ironically, also glorifies the Pope as the representative of a godfather, respectively God-creator. But I have written something similar in the Book of Delusions of God. But even this explanation will not allow the earthly linguists to correct and eliminate their misdefinitions of the word terms, so that there will still be great misunderstandings about the values of words and concepts.
Among Earth humans, there is a presumptuousness of better knowing, especially in various sciences, which also includes linguistics. Unfortunately, it is precisely in this respect that falsifications have arisen as a result of constant changes in word values and conceptual values. The real and true origin of terms and words has long since been lost and replaced by pseudo-declarations regarding their origin. As a result, the real roots of terms and words can truly no longer be traced back to their origin, which results in the enormous falsifications of terms and words that exist today in all languages, whereby I am speaking in particular of the German language, which is affected by this and which is increasingly being falsified by linguistic or academic know-it-alls. And this despite the fact that German is the best language on earth and can also not be replaced by any other language even remotely. So much for that. But you still have to translate the goblet of the truth as well as possible into English, even if it is not able to give the correct content, because the English language is just too pathetic.
Your will be done, my son. One thing I can say, though, is that translating the goblet of the truth into the English language is really extremely difficult. This is also true of Japanese. Many words and terms and even meanings cannot be translated into other languages, only inadequately or incorrectly.
This is familiar to me, because we have already spoken about it several times. On Earth there is not another equivalent language except German and your mother tongue, Swiss German. All of them are poor in their expression and explanation. In addition to this, what is also to be criticized, unfortunately, is that in the German and Swiss German language, even the German-speaking linguists are not familiar with the extensive values and meanings of the terms and words of these two languages, as you learn to understand, interpret, and explain them from scratch through my father's fath. Due to this lack of understanding of the linguists with regard to the German and Swiss German language, a great many terms and words, etc., are misunderstood, and consequently many mistakes are also made when translating the language. This is very detrimental to the meaning of terms, words, and sentences, because it results in falsifications which give a completely wrong picture. This is particularly regrettable because the German language is the only and best earthly language with which everything can be said and explained in the smallest detail, exactly and precisely, which is not possible with any other earthly language if I disregard your mother tongue. So it would be of urgent necessity that the German language should be elevated comprehensively to the status of a world language. Because through this language alone, everything can be expressed in a true way. This also refers to the truthful understanding of the goblet of the truth and all your other works.
Your explanation is not controversial among the rational mind, but all the wise and foolish will rant and rave against it. But something else, a question. Is the term orb respectively orbs familiar to you?
Yes, why do you ask?
They are luminous spheres that are seen and photographed all over the world, I have been told.
That is true. They are another form of rods. that is to say, bioorganisms of electromagnetic form, which are actual energy formations, possess an energy intelligence, and which also react to human consciousness respectively to thoughts and feelings. We already spoke about this at the 402nd Official Contact Conversation on the 29th of October, 2005.
Then the matter is settled. Thanks for the explanation. Do you still have things concerning predictions like earthquakes, seaquakes, and extraordinary events? And what about the swine flu? Is it still going on?
A strong seaquake of magnitude 6 occurs off the coast of Crete on the 1st of July. A further quake will then occur in China in the second week of July, causing great damage and destruction, but fortunately there will be few deaths. This is followed on the 12th of July by a 6.0 magnitude earthquake in Peru, which is followed by a strong seaquake of 7.8 magnitude near New Zealand. On Monday, the 3rd of August, a triple magnitude 7 earthquake will then occur in northwestern Mexico. Further but smaller quakes will then occur in various countries around the world. Severe quakes then occur on the 11th of August in Asia, with a magnitude of 7.6 at the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean, and briefly followed by a 6.6 magnitude earthquake in Japan, which was followed by another one of the same magnitude on the 14th of August. Another seaquake, which will have a magnitude of 7.3 on the Richter scale, occurs on the 2nd of September in Indonesia off the island of Java. Unfortunately, this quake, which also shakes large parts of the island, will cause human lives and destruction. To your question regarding the swine flu is to say yes, it is spreading rapidly because the disease is now being transmitted from person to person in many countries in millions of cases. Already on my last visit, I said that there is a danger of a pandemic and that it could come about. It is the fault of those Earth humans who have trivialized everything. The real culprit is the irresponsible imprudence of governments and health officials who, when the epidemic broke out, did not stop world tourism, but even declared it to be safe. Of course, they reject the blame. Then, on the 7th of July in Moscow, there is a welcome move between the American and Russian presidents on the reduction of nuclear warheads. Unfortunately, it is not yet possible to speak of a total reduction of nuclear weapons, but at least there will be a ray of hope. Contrary to this, the subsequent G8 summit in L'Aquila will be virtually unsuccessful in terms of climate change mitigation. What is being decided is the most ridiculous thing in the world, and does not address the main problem in any way. Namely, that the growth of overpopulation must first and foremost be restricted by means of far-reaching measures of global and controlled birth control. The world's leaders have still not understood that all measures to reduce pollution, etc., are completely pointless and not feasible. Because during the period of lax measures, the world population will increase again by hundreds of millions, or even billions, making what has been decided and implemented obsolete and completely pointless. All evils and destructions of any kind continue to grow during the period of the countermeasures to be implemented, in proportion to the increasing overpopulation. What this means, however, is not understood by those in charge, because they cannot understand that the growth of overpopulation increases all evils and problems, several times over from what was previously the case with the smaller population and where the nonsensical decisions were taken.
Clear case of megalomania, because those responsible, as well as the majority of the population, believe they have fed wisdom with shovel excavators. When one considers that mainly older semesters of responsible persons and citizens of the earth believe themselves wise, but decide on horrendous nonsense, then this clearly indicates that they have not learned much during their lives. They simply advocate what they have learned up to the age of 25, after which the learning is over. Just as it is indeed the case that human beings on Earth only really learn up to the age of 25, after which the learning is usually completed. As I already learned from your father Svath, the human being of the Earth only really and consciously learns until the age of 25, after which he lives the rest of his life and does not actually continue learning. In truth, there are only a few who really and consciously continue learning from this age, and are not satisfied with their 25 years of wisdom. So we can only speak of exceptions with those human beings who after this age still learn consciously and willingly, and acquire real knowledge and wisdom, as well as a clear and reasonable understanding of reality and its truth. And it is only these exceptions that are also those who are consciously, socially, humanly and wisely aware of their own behavior, and also work on it in the further life, as well as on their virtues, on being truly human, and on understanding and fulfilling the creational natural laws and recommendations. And all these things are values that the majority of those who are responsible for the world and earthly humanity lack, because after their 25th year of age they no longer strive for further training in these matters. Consequently, they are also unable to perceive and understand reality and its truth. It is especially blatant that the reality and truth of this is not recognized and not understood, that all the evils and problems on Earth are due to overpopulation. This, if we disregard all the evils and problems that have been rolling over the Earth since time immemorial due to religions and sects and their delusions of God, and which still today bring war, torture, terror, disgrace, murder, hatred, revenge, and destruction. But again about the swine flu. There are already conspiracy theories, and that this could degenerate similar to the Spanish flu in 1918. Can you say anything more about this?
Regarding the swine flu pandemic that you ask me about, it is not one of those stupid conspiracy theories that are invented again and again by panic mongers, know-it-alls, and pathologically delusional people who sense malicious conspiracies behind each and every event. But something more specific is to be said. As early as 1918, a flu plague with the pathogen H1N1 was rampant, claiming around 50 million human lives within 2 years. The swine flu also originates from this virus strain. In 1919, the Spanish flu created a virus dynasty, so to speak, which continues to this day. But what is being done by pharmaceutical companies with regard to today's epidemic, respectively swine flu, is a huge profiteering because governments, health organizations, and private persons worldwide are being bought for billions by them, as well as by the black market. With these drugs, mainly Tamiflu, but also others, a huge business is being made and security is being promised, but it is based only on fear and panic-mongering. This criminal business idea is based on the evil fear-inducing scenarios which, it is not believed, are constantly being published by the WHO, respectively the World Health Organization, and by health authorities and self-proclaimed experts. Thus, already in the month of April, the swine flu was declared the first pandemic in decades, and thus the fear was stirred up. Of course, the whole pandemic could have been avoided if the governments and the health authorities and the real professionals had immediately banned global tourism, etc., but this is not what happened. Since the outbreak of the epidemic flu about 6 months ago, by the end of August, more than 100 human beings will have died worldwide, but this is much less than a normal flu would require. If you consider that the Earth's population is currently over 7.5 billion 7,500,000 human beings, the number of people who are ill, those who are still ill, and the number of dead is out of all proportion to the insane mass of the Earth's population. At least until the month of August 2009, the course of the disease will not give any effective indication that the swine flu, we call every flu a disease, is different from a completely normal flu. But there is an absolute possibility that the swine flu will be further exaggerated by irresponsible people and misused for a billion-dollar deal, which, as you say, will and can be used by all those who want to, and are able to, financially reap the benefits of this deal. It is not only the pharmaceutical companies, but also governments and health officials and many irresponsible businessmen who make a lot of money with the flu drugs and mass vaccinations through shares, partnerships, and percentage shareholdings, as well as through the black market, etc.
Yes, there is a lot to be gained in this regard, after all.
That will be the case, because unreasonably, fear is being stirred up. Although the epidemic cannot be described as harmless, and it does not only spread to pigs and human beings, but also to other animals, the panic-mongering is also not harmless. With that, I unfortunately have to end our conversations now because, as you have just heard, I am called. So I will go and say goodbye to you, dear friend. It may take longer again until my next visit.
Then so be it. It cannot be helped. Love to all, and farewell, my friend. I am sure the time would not be long, because I am not running out of work. Goodbye.